I bet you thought this was going to be a nerf video, didn't you? Well, Square Enix have listened to community feedback and instead of nerfing stuff into the ground, have decided, wisely may I add, to buff underperformers and to balance overperformers, but not so much as to nuke the builds, just lower their efficiency. Yo guys, welcome to might what be the largest ever update done to Outriders. I'm Dake, and thank you for checking out my video on the patch notes. I really do appreciate it. If you could smash that like button and get involved in the comments when you come across something that you're passionate about, that would be incredible. Just to summarise, this took me just over an hour to read through all of the notes, so there is so much to go over. I am currently recovering from COVID, so I just want to reiterate, I am excited about these updates, even though at times I may not sound like it, just because I'm still recovering. So let's jump into the key takeaways, and then dive into the details behind the balances, of which 80% of this was buffs. So let's jump into the quality of life updates. So item locking, that thing that we've wanted forever? Yeah, that's now a thing. It's a very welcome change to the game, and means we can finally delete gear without constant fear of deleting items we don't actually want to delete. How you do this hopefully will be quite self-explanatory within the game, but it's going to revolve around holding a button down to lock the items in place, which makes sense, but also hopefully will mean that it's quite difficult to not accidentally delete stuff as well. So I think that's probably the right direction. As you can see, it says right click on the mouse to hold and lock. How long that is, however, is unknown currently, but hopefully it will be quite easy to do, so happy days. So now we move on to improvements to the quick mark functionality, which now includes legendary, apocalypse epic, and apocalypse legendary rarities. Now, what that probably is going to look like is that when you're in your inventory, there will be additional tabs to select so that you can quickly mark whichever one that you want. Before, the maximum rarity which you could select through quick mark functionality was epic. And what that means is that before, when you selected epic, you selected apocalypse epic and also all of your epic gear. Now, before that I had a little bit of a workaround for that, which I found by accident, which was basically I was able to delete one regular purple and then it would only select the regular purples instead of also including apocalypse epics. So that was a good workaround for a little while, but this is going to be something which is going to be quite useful, I think, for pretty much everyone who's playing the game. I don't really think that apocalypse legendary rarities was really necessary, because I just don't think we're going to be deleting those in any quick functionality. So looking at endgame changes, we're seeing improvements to apocalypse tier leveling. So starting from apocalypse tier 20, the requirement to level up apocalypse tiers has been reduced by 10%. Now that is a step in the right direction, but I think that people will still want to see a bit more, because the artificial grind is really taking it out of people. And for me personally, I mean, it's never really been a race. It's been a case of, experimenting with different builds, finding stuff which is fun to play around with, and while I'm doing that experimenting, I'm gaining apocalypse tiers. So it has a double benefit to me, because as a content creator, I want to be looking at builds that are exciting for you guys. So if you are looking to find out more about new and exciting builds, then I'm going to be doing a lot of testing and making sure that I find ones that are going to be fun and also effective and also versatile, so that you don't die every 5 minutes. When it comes to crafting and resources, this has actually been improved quite significantly, and the resources and anomaly extract have been increased dramatically by 500% in Tiago's tropes, which is just fantastic, really, because previously we were struggling so much with getting anomaly dust, and it was a real struggle, and I feel that a lot of people were struggling from burnout as a result because we just couldn't upgrade our gear quickly enough. And if we wanted to play around with different builds, we just didn't have the capability of doing so. So this is a much needed improvement to the game. Now, they also did mention that a full run through of Tiago, including tropes, should now net out about double the amount of anomaly extract per run compared to before the launch. I believe I was hitting about maybe up to 3,000 to 4,000, so that should be looking at around 7,000 to 8,000 per run, which I think is much more rewarding. Now, they have also slightly increased the amount of anomaly extract from the final boss. However, this is nothing in comparison to the actual route of playing the game for what you're playing the game for. And naturally they want to detract from people farming the last boss over and over again, because while that is effective for getting your gains, it isn't really that great as far as playing the game. So what they want to see is people playing the game without having to use exploits, and obviously going back from the lobby and going back and forth. They just want to see people having fun, enjoying all of the content, and benefiting from playing the game the way that it was actually meant to be played. Now, when it comes to crafting and upgrading, starting at level 50, the anomaly extract costs required to upgrade gear has been reduced slightly by 5%. Between the two above changes, increased gains and reduced costs, players should now be able to support upgrading 2 full sets of gear per Apocalypse tier level, which is really good and kind of touches on my last point that it just needed to happen. And also, when it comes to Apocalypse gear drop rates, starting from tier 11, the amount of that has basically been increased and will increase further for each Apocalypse tier, which again was greatly needed. So moving on to expeditions. Expeditions definitely needed that love because they weren't rewarding, and as a result of that, we found that people were getting really burnt out on trials just because there wasn't really a lot of variety. It was either trials or nothing, and now since they've done some improvements to expeditions, they should feel similar in progression for loot gained versus time investment, and that's really interesting because before that was definitely not the case. And also, anomaly extract farming should also feel more viable in expeditions as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, and I hope that they have done it properly, because if they have, then we're going to have a lot of different ways of getting our levels up quicker, and this will, I think, will counteract that burnout that a lot of players have been feeling, especially since we saw on Reddit recently that about 75% of players have actually stopped playing, and I do feel that is largely because of burnout. So let's move on to bug fixes. They fixed a bug which basically meant that players would miss a PAX point if they transitioned out of the fisherman fight too quickly. Now, that was an issue which I raised in the beta, and I was very confused by it when it happened to me, so I'm really glad to see that it's actually been fixed. They've also fixed a bug that prevented characters transferring to Worldslayer from obtaining their first ascension point. So what that means is that if you have got 32 points currently, you're displaying 31 points, that 31 will bump up to 32, and then you'll have all the points that you need. So when you actually reach tier 200, you'll have 200 points instead of 199, which would be very annoying. They fixed a bug which personally hasn't really affected me ever, but it details that co-op players that were leveling up that had acquired all required experience, but the party had been wiped out during combat. Yeah, no, I've not seen that before, but if it has affected anyone, I'm grateful to see that it's been fixed. They also fixed a bug that causes players' health to be improperly calculated if they leveled up immediately after dying. Again, not seen that one either or heard about it, but if it was causing anyone any problems, then I am glad to see that fixed. Have you guys come across either of those two bugs that I just mentioned though? I'd be really interested to learn if this has actually been a thing, or if I've just been hiding underneath a rock. I don't know. So now let's move on to bug fixes, skills and notes. They fixed a bug that was causing twisted rounds, volcanic rounds and blighted rounds skills to be blocked when firing any one-shot weapon. Personally, again, not seen this ever before, not ever experienced it myself, but then again, I think that a large amount of the community don't tend to dabble in one-shot weapons just because they aren't really that beneficial. They also fixed a bug that prevented the mods Minefield and Legendary Minefield from triggering more than once per enemy, which has been something which has been going on for quite a while now, so probably a good thing that's been fixed and might upset a few people, so apologies for the bad news. For the Devastator, they fixed a bug that prevented the Devastator's pack nodes, Finishing Touch and Earthen Shell from working properly after the player transitioned from a no weapons area. For the Technomancer, they fixed a bug that prevented Technomancers from activating the Pain Launcher skill if they were too close to covers or walls. I personally have experienced this one because I've been accolade farming like hell recently, and it has been something which has been a bit of a bugbear for me. They fixed a bug that prevented Technomancers from cycling between camera sides when using the Tools of Destruction minigun. I haven't personally noticed that, but I also think that minigun is ridiculously slow, so even though it is quite a fun skill to use, it's not really my main go-to skill, just because I don't like walking incredibly slowly. They fixed a bug that caused the stat screen of Technomancers to display abnormal results while the Tools of Destruction skill is active. Now, again, I haven't experienced that either, or I haven't noticed it, but either way, I suppose it's a good fix. For the Trickster, they fixed a bug that prevented Trickster's Hunt the Prey skill from triggering if enemies were behind cover. Now, this has been a real problem, and this is going to be a very much welcome fix, because this pretty much meant life or death for anyone using Hunt the Prey, and Hunt the Prey is probably one of the most used skills by a Trickster. They also fixed a bug that caused Tricksters to lock up if they used Hunt the Prey on an enemy that died at the same time. Again, this is something which was causing a lot of problems for Tricksters, so a very welcome change. They fixed a bug that could cause Tricksters to get stuck in geometry on certain levels when using Hunt the Prey. I personally have seen some pretty funny screenshots of Tricksters being stuck in walls in different places of the maps, and yeah, that's made for some pretty good meme material. They also fixed a bug that causes the Trickster's Twisted Rounds skill to remain active indefinitely if a player was staggered during the reload animation, which I believe was actually a problem, more than them basically nerfing the ability to keep Twisted Rounds. They also fixed a bug that was causing Renet's knife to deal inconsistent damage when used in combination with certain mods. Again, this is something which could be seen more as a nerf, but hopefully it's not too bad. And then they fixed a bug that was causing time rift and weightlessness to end prematurely, which is always a good thing because you don't want those skills ending too soon, because they are quite important to how we actually play the class as it is. I think Time Rift is probably one of the most used skills by a trickster, just because the Hunt the Prey, Time Rift and Twisted Rounds builds, they're kind of like the way that we've been playing ever since the game came out, and is the most effective when it comes to the fastest complete speeds as well. So let's move on to bug fixes on gear. They fixed a bug that was preventing the Technomancer's Grim Inventor set bonus from triggering consistently in combination with the Pain Launcher skill if there was only one rocket remaining left in the RPG. Personally, I tend to use Fixing Wave. I think that's more reliable for replenishing your ammo if using Quartermaster. They fixed a bug that was causing a status power provided by items to be multiplied instead of decreased as players increase their Apocalypse tiers. This could intentionally lead to increases as high as up to 700% status power at Apocalypse tier 40, which is a smidge overpowered. And they also fixed a bug that prevented the Mycologist set from behaving properly in transmog menus. They also fixed a bug for a headgear piece called the Wraith's Mask, which there was no transmog design, but that really has no implications on anything, so it's kind of irrelevant really, but I guess another thing which is good to see them fixing, even though it has no real purpose. So let's move on to bug fixes for mods. They fixed a bug that was causing the Shock and Awe mod to trigger more often than intended. They fixed a bug that was causing the Relativity Theorem mod to inconsistently refresh and in some cases even extend cooldowns. They fixed a bug that caused Untamed Power mod to skip the cooldown for Trickster's Hunt the Prey skill, which is kind of interesting. And they fixed a bug that was preventing the pyromancer mod Ember Shield from triggering more than one stack if the player had a skill node Master of Resistance active. They fixed a bug that prevented the Tricksters and another one armor mod to not function for killing shots, and a bug that prevented the Devastator's Reflect Bullet mod Equator from working in relation to melee enemies, which is kind of annoying really, especially when you're using that particular skill. They fixed a bug that prevented the Concussive Force mod from increasing damage by the Devastator's Chip Off the Old Block mod effect, and fixed a bug that caused Self-Medication mod to fully restore players' health each time it triggered. Now, this mod has pretty much been dubbed the Do Not Die mod, just because it's just been so overpowered and so broken. So it's going to be sad to see that one go, but it wasn't working the way that it was written, so it kind of had to be done. And then they've done some visual changes to the Death Ray, which was kind of a problem really in certain maps like Eye of the Storm, just because it was pretty much blinding. So that will be a welcome change, because it was really, really bad, and personally I would have definitely not recommended using it in the slightest. So looking at bug fixes for enemies, they fixed an issue with Phoenix Aura effect, where certain abilities from the Devastator, Pyromancer and Technomancer weren't working properly. They fixed some issues with enemies as a whole, so for instance Skirmisher Warlords would appear on the score sheet multiple times, the Arbiter would get stuck in a melee attack loop if targeted by Hunt the Prey at a certain time. There was a bug which allowed players to interrupt enemy abilities with regular weapon shots, which shouldn't have been allowed, and for some reason players were able to get behind cover when affected by the Executioner's Chainlock ability. I'd say that Shadow Beast's melee attack in relation to its actual visual effect is quite a good thing because it did seem quite inconsistent. And let's not forget our favourite enemies of all, which is the forest shricks, because they suck. And yeah, so they've also fixed a bug that could cause the snow behemoths to become idle if your attack was avoided by the devastator's gravity leap skill, which is kind of funny, to be honest, because that actually seems to be quite a sensible move. If something's coming at you, jump in the air. They won't get you. And they fixed a bug that could cause enemies to get stuck in an animation loop by players using the concentration blast mod, or pyromancers using the overheat skill. Again, haven't come across those myself, but they do sound quite fun, and I think that anyone who was able to use those would probably be quite sad that they're gone. When it comes to things like the crawler being prevented from moving away from its spawn location on the cliffside path, I think that's something which will be definitely a welcome fix, because that in itself kind of stops the game from transitioning smoothly. And then there's a bunch of other visual effects that have been fixed. So all in all, I think it's all positive things, really. So on to the general bug fixes. They fixed a bug that reset auto loot filter settings after returning to gameplay from the lobby. I suspect this is to do with the duplication issue, so I think that was widely abused and is now going to be fixed. They fixed a bug that caused Apocalypse gear to appear in Tiago's rotation for players who had not upgraded to Worldslayer. Again, this was kind of an issue which they addressed previously through the nerf of Tiago, and that was addressed in the way of which level 51 and above were able to get Worldslayer gear, whereas anything around level 30 between level 50 weren't, which was a bit annoying because people used to farm that way to get the gear that they needed, and that is no longer available. They fixed a bug that caused client players to see an incorrect number of retries remaining for the trial guitar when exiting to the lobby and using continue. Fixed a bug that was causing the armor worn by other players to jitter and jump in multiplayer, and resolved clipping issues. Now, that's interesting because I've had a lot of issues with clipping anything on the desktop, so if that's what I think it is, then that will be a very welcome change from me. They resolved issues for camera movement during cutscenes, which I haven't really been affected by in the slightest. Implemented multiple improvements and resolutions for issues relating to light and shadow, improvements to certain areas where FPS dropped, and that probably is quite a good thing, to be honest, because I've had quite a lot of that recently and it's just been stuttering away in the background, which is quite annoying, so I'll be glad to see that fixed myself. They fixed multiple bug fixes related to audio and sound effects not playing properly or not ending properly. There was multiple improvements to geometry, collision and placement of enemies or items, so maybe we might not see enemies stuck in the maps anymore. That would be quite nice. And multiple bug fixes to quest progression blockers that might be relating to the mini-map itself. That would be quite welcomed, because I think a lot of people in the base game and also in this game had issues with that because it just sent you in the very wrong directions when you're looking for things. And then there were just a bunch of various other minor bug fixes and crash fixes. So that's all that's summed up. And now let's move on to the balancing stuff. So we're going to jump on to the balancing for the classes now. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually do that in a separate video. So just follow the end screen, and then when it comes to the classes that you want to see, whether that be trickster, pyromancer, devastator or technomancer, you can just use the timestamps to jump around that and find what is most relevant to you.